Today on the Tech Bytes podcast, we get a look at the inner workings of the Wireshark Foundation. Now, many of our listeners will have heard of Wireshark. It's a free, open source, and widely used tool for packet and protocol analysis. In fact, it's one of those tools that's probably been around for much of your own networking career. But what does it take to keep Wireshark running, to update software, add new features, and support developers and documentation, and the infrastructure that makes Wireshark available to you at the click of a button? We talk with Wireshark creator and lead developer Gerald Combs about the Wireshark Foundation. Gerald, welcome to the podcast. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with Wireshark, but can you give us just a very quick overview of what it is, what it does, and its place in sort of the networking community?
Sure. Wireshark is a desktop application, and its job is to show you as much as it can about every packet that you give it. And it basically takes all this, information that normally flows over a network that's, this kind of bits and bytes that flow back and forth and present that in a way that humans can understand and work with. On the application level, kind of beyond that, it's this kind of blob of code that's over 6 million lines of code now that has been developed by 2,500 developers, somewhere in that range, and it's downloaded by, at least on the servers that we manage for the macOS and Windows installers, about 1.5 million. Well, I say 1.5 million downloads a month. I don't know how many people that translates to, but
Wow.
and I don't know how many people use it on Linux, but I'm sure the number's kind of in line with that.
Now, I've been using Wireshark since it was Ethereal, and it replaced my very expensive Network General sniffer we had sitting in the corner. That was a dedicated piece of hardware. All of a sudden, I was liberated and able to use this packet capture and protocol analysis tool. And it was free. It was magic, right? Is the way it seemed at the time. But over time, Wireshark's evolved to be supported by or overseen, I guess, by the Wireshark Foundation, which was something I found out really recently chatting with you, Gerald. Could you explain what the foundation's role is in maintaining Wireshark?
Sure. I mean, the Wireshark's mission is to help people learn about networking. And the main way it does that is to support the development of Wireshark and pay for our bills for our infrastructure, but also to teach people how to use Wireshark more effectively. And we do that a number of ways. We work with educators and instructors to help teach Wireshark, but we also host a conference that we have twice a year, one in the US and one in Europe, called SharkFest. And we invite people in. We have a bunch of speakers, and they talk about using Wireshark in different ways and analyzing networks and things along that line.
So that all comes under the Wireshark Foundation, both the code development for the platform, and then also the conference. SharkFest is all part of what the Wireshark Foundation is delivering to the community.
Yeah. Having said that, it sounds like we're this big thing, but we have one full-time employee and one part-time. We don't pay any Wireshark developers. The foundation doesn't. I work for a company called Sysdig during the day. All the other core developers work at different companies and they contribute their code. The instructors, of course, contribute their time. We, have different arrangements for different instructors, but that's, basically it.
So when I say Wireshark Foundation, people might be imagining, there's some beautiful building somewhere with, glass offices and people running around. That's not the case. This sounds a little bit more, I don't want to say shoestring, that sounds pejorative, but it's humble, it's modest.
Exactly. Yeah. Along with that, it's really beneficial to the project to have a legal entity, and that's basically the role the foundation serves.
Okay.
Not only for helping people learn about networking, but when I talked about downloading Wireshark for Windows and Mac OS, when you download it, those installers are signed, and they're signed by the Wireshark Foundation. And in order to get that code signing certificate from Apple, you need to be an entity that's legal. And the foundation serves different roles like that as well. And that sort of thing, I guess, sounds minor, but it's actually, I think, an important thing, and it does help people to use Wireshark. And when you download Wireshark and have that signing certificate, your OS doesn't complain at you, which removes a barrier to entry to installing it, which is actually a pretty significant thing.
When you decided to set up a foundation around Wireshark, obviously there's the Linux Foundation, which oversees millions of, they got a huge portfolio of open source projects. Did you think about going under the umbrella of an existing foundation, or why did you decide to set up Wireshark Foundation as its own entity?
We looked at 4 options. When you run an open source project, you need bits of infrastructure. And at a very basic level, nowadays, there are companies like GitHub and GitLab and different services like that that'll take care of your coding infrastructure, meaning that you can organize your code and get it built and managed and things like that. And they do a great job. GitHub and GitLab have been these immense boons to the open source development. I can't understate how effective they've been at that. But if you use GitHub or GitLab, one of the things you might notice, or at least I notice, is that they don't, they have a analyze my code button or, approve this pull request button, but they don't have a connect me to a lawyer button. And and once your project grows to that state where you might have to sign some sort of legal agreement, or you might have a trademark that you need to manage, or a conference you need to manage, that's kind of beyond the capabilities of GitHub and GitLab. And so you need some sort of business model, for lack of a better term. But well, I guess that's probably the most accurate thing. And there are different umbrella organizations that can help with that, like the Linux Foundation or the Software Freedom Conservancy. We did actually talk to both organizations, and they're great. But when it came down to decide which way to actually go, in our particular case, we already had this team that manages a conference for us. And so we kind of built a legal structure around that. Initially, which made the most sense for us. If you do have an open source project that's kind of growing and getting big, and you're looking at an umbrella, I do recommend taking a look at Linux Foundation and Software Freedom Conservancy, because the people we talked to were just absolutely great.
And Wireshark used to have a corporate backer, right? I remember you being at Riverbed for quite a while, Gerald, and I think my memory is that Riverbed was a corporate backer of Wireshark and kind of let you do your thing while you were working there. But I guess that's not what's going on now, right?
That's correct. Prior to the foundation, and this kind of goes back to the ease of not having a business model. Prior to the foundation, the primary sponsor of the project was whoever I worked for at the time. That started out with a company called Network Integration Services, then Case Technologies, then Riverbed, and then Sysdig, who helped us actually move to the foundation. And each of those corporate sponsors were great, and I'm very grateful to them for the support they gave. But at the same time, having things structured like that means that we have two single points of failure. We have a single point of failure with me because I was the only one working at each company that was really directly involved with the project. And so if I had to step away for whatever reason, we'd have this leadership gap that needed to be filled. And the corporation itself was our primary sponsor. And if they decided to change direction or got acquired or something bad happened at that level, then suddenly we'd be looking for another primary sponsor. And so having the foundation in place fills those gaps and removes those single points of failure, meaning that if I need to step away I don't have any plans to do this, but if I needed to, I can be rest assured that we have this leadership team in place that can carry on and keep doing what we're doing. And the same with our sponsors. We have multiple sponsors now of the foundation. So we have these multiple funding sources that can keep the project going and keep the foundation going.
Yeah, the foundation provides like an entity for Wireshark to continue to exist outside of the individuals right now who are currently keeping it going, essentially.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it sounds like an elaborate ruse to help me sleep better at night, but that's maybe what it is. I don't know.
Okay, but with the corporate backer, I mean, it was pretty easy to understand how the bills were getting paid. The Wireshark Foundation is not a revenue generating entity. You still have sponsors. You still need to generate. How are the bills getting paid, Gerald? That's what I want to know.
Right now, we do that through a number of ways. One, we have corporate memberships. We have all these different corporations that are sponsoring the project at different levels. I mean, one of the kind of standard things to do when you have a nonprofit like this, and by the way, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and that 501c3 means we conform to a specific portion of the U.S. tax code. And when you give money to us, it's tax deductible, which is, at least in the U.S., which is great. Kind of the standard thing to do when you do this is to set up these different tiers of sponsorship and these different ways that people can sponsor the project. And that's kind of what we have in place and what we're evolving over time. If you're a big corporation and you have all these engineers using Wireshark and you love us that much that you want to give us money, we have a sponsorship model for that. If you are a vendor in the networking space and you want to get in front of our users at SharkFest and kind of interact with them, we have a sponsorship model for that as well. And we're looking at kind of extending that. If you maybe don't fit into either of those, but you still want to be involved with the project, I encourage you to get a hold of the foundation, and we'll have contact info for that. But that's one of the things we're focusing on. Sorry, go ahead.
More to the point, I mean, you need more sponsors. You have some sponsors. There's some dollars coming through the door of the Wireshark Foundation, but the Wireshark project could benefit from more, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We are bringing in just enough money to keep the lights on and to run our conference. But if we had more money, we could take on other initiatives like better educational initiatives. We could maybe even sponsor development for a specific area of Wireshark. A specific feature you wanted to add, or something that we could do. One of the questions that came up with one of our sponsors was, "Hey, you ever thought about rewriting Wireshark in Rust?" And no, it's a valid question, and it's something that other projects are doing, and other companies are doing with their code bases, because Rust is this memory safe language. It's kind of in many ways it's the future, but at the same time, trying to do that with Wireshark is not a trivial thing, and you would have to dedicate at least one engineer, maybe more engineers, to do that. And so that'd be a major project and require major funding.
Are there ways for individuals to then interact with or support the foundation?
Sure. I mean, we have, if you go to the Wireshark.org website, we have a donate button. You can go, and if you want to make an individual donation, and we certainly welcome that. Thing that I say occasionally is that, if Wireshark has saved your rear end, then maybe it would be a good thing to maybe donate just because of that. But or if you just love Wireshark. But individuals can donate. But at the same time, if we have recurring revenue that we know is coming in the door, it helps us to plan effectively and plan initiatives within the foundation.
That makes sense, which is why I guess that sponsorship is probably more preferred, because you can make more plans around that kind of money.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, if you had more resources, you could do more things. But the foundation actually is doing new things. Like recently, you announced StratoShark. Can you tell us what that is and what relationship it has, if any, to Wireshark?
Sure. StratoShark is related to my day job at Sysdig. Sysdig is a company that focuses on securing cloud environments. And they have an open source project called Falco, which acts a lot like an IDS, but it runs on top of your Linux machine. And instead of looking at network packets, it looks at system calls. So at the host level, the application level, it says, okay, this application here is reading from your Etsy directory, or maybe writing to your Etsy directory. On a Linux system or Unix system, that's maybe not a good thing. And so it'll trigger an alarm, and you can then go investigate that. StratoShark is a complementary application for that, similar to how Wireshark might complement an IDS in the networking world. And StratoShark will take all these system calls that are logged out by Falco, or there's a command line tool called Sysdig, which is the same name as the employer, but it'll take these system call capture files and load them in, and you can look at system calls much of the way you can look at network packets and analyze them effectively and filter them and do other things, much as you would with Wireshark.
So do you imagine sort of a network engineer using StratoShark the way they would use Wireshark, or is this for, maybe more like security operators, threat hunters, that kind of thing?
Primarily the latter, but I consider myself a network engineer, at least I was in past life, and I still find this interesting and fascinating, being able to pull the same sort of event time series data out of my OS's kernel, similar to the way that I can pull packets off the network and analyze them. I love working at that same low level, and I think within, say, a larger enterprise, if you have different teams that focus on the network and on the systems. Now with StratoShark, you have these tools that operate the same and have the same sort of feature set. And so you can kind of share knowledge at using this application level, and maybe share tips back and forth and work more effectively that way. At least that's something that I hope will occur with StratoShark.
Now, you mentioned SharkFest, which is the annual Wireshark conference. You've got a SharkFest coming up in June. Do you want to give us a little teaser of what's going on at the event?
Sure. One of the big things that's going to happen this time around is that we're going to have a keynote by Vint Cerf. He spoke at the very first SharkFest, and he gave a keynote at one other SharkFest, but it's something I'm really excited about, the fact that he's going to be there and speaking.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the really cool things about our industry is that a lot of the pioneers are still here, and you can talk to them, and this is an opportunity to do that. And I love the fact that we can have people like Vint Cerf. A couple of years ago, we had Radio Perlman speak at SharkFest, and that was delightful. And Vince always, it's great a delight as well to see him talk. He just has so much knowledge to share, and I love the fact that we can get people like that, people who are just these pillars of our community, and get them in front of people who are just starting out and just learning, and or maybe at various different points in their careers, and just get them connected. And that's just one of the things I love about SharkFest.
Yeah, that's cool. Are there other things going on at SharkFest? Like, can I go there and get some training or learn how to use Wireshark? What happens? What else happens?
Sure. The basic format of the conference is that prior to the conference, we have pre-conference classes. So if you maybe are new to networking, you can go to the pre-conference classes and kind of build up a foundational knowledge base and be in a really good place to get the most out of the conference proper. And during the conference, we have different tracks. We have introductory tracks and intermediate and advanced tracks, and that focus on different areas of networking, whether it's just basic networking or security or what have you. One of the quotes I heard about SharkFest years ago was that it's one of the few conferences where speakers will go to see each other's talks, instead of just coming in and leaving. Because we do have a wide variety of stuff. I mean, I love the fact that we have these people that want to come in and share all this interesting stuff, and it's some of it's the same each year, which is great, but a lot of it's also different each year, which is also great. I love having that stability and variety.
Well, Gerald, thank you for being here and giving us a little bit of insight on the Wireshark Foundation and how folks can get involved. For more information, go to wireshark.org, and also SharkFest, the Wireshark conference. It's June 14th through the 19th in Richmond, Virginia, here in the U.S. So this June 2025. Thank you again, Gerald, for being here. Thanks to you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find many more fine, free technical podcasts and our community blog, plus much, much more at packetpushers.net. Follow us on LinkedIn, hear us on Spotify, and rate us on Apple Podcasts. And last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.